You know, we love to cover books on this show, which is why I'm so excited about this next interview, where we're about to take a moment to put the spotlight on the people who get the books into readers' hands. For more than 50 years, Paul Yamazaki has been the principal buyer at San Francisco's legendary City Lights Booksellers. And now he's out with a new book called Reading the Room, a bookseller's tale. Welcome to New Day, Paul. We are so delighted to have you here.
Well, thank you so much, Amity. It's really delightful to be here.
So let's talk about you. How did you get into book selling and end up at City Lights?
Well, I was very politically active in the late 60s, and I was actually, because of my political activity, I was sentenced to 6 months in county jail.
Oh my goodness, in San Francisco?
Yes, in San Francisco. And a good friend of mine, activist friend, also worked at City Lights, and he explained my situation to Lawrence Ferlinghetti, the poet, and his business partner, Shig Morau, and they just hired me sight unseen based off of Francis Oka's recommendation.
They were like, this is the guy we want, this is the mind we want, selecting books, right?
Well, they didn't have any anticipation. They were just kind of acting out of goodwill, and so I don't think they expected, I certainly didn't expect to be there 54 years later.
54 years later. And since then, you have curated a broad selection at City Lights. You, this is what I'm told, you select 6,000 titles a year from more than 50,000 books. And then you invite the readers to ask the question, how did this book find me? Let's talk about that.
Well, that's, I think, one of the key things is to be curious and to really understand the process of how a book gets into your hands. And certainly for myself as a bookseller and person who makes some of these decisions about acquisition, is that asking that question inevitably leads you back to the editor. And it's knowing what the editor does well is really kind of a key to what we do at City Lights. And so when we talk about that massive number of books, we can't obviously read all those. And
That's true.
And knowing what an editor does well gives kind of a head start or a shortcut.
And a publisher too, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Knowing the publishers. I mean, we know what we're going to get from Simon & Schuster. We know what certain publishers are going to bring us. But tell us about the role that booksellers play in connecting the constellation of authors, publishers, and readers. How do you connect all that as a bookseller?
Well, working with my colleagues at City Lights, we kind of putting the unusual together and kind of getting the books in dialogue with each other, and then that creates a conversation with a potential reader, and helping them to incite to pick up the book that they may not have been thinking about.
Yeah. Oh, that's so cool. What do you think the importance is of diversity and representation in books at bookstores?
Well, for us, we think of kind of race and class as kind of part of the texture of American culture. And so we don't think of it as a separate thing, but as part of a tightly braided rope, that if you don't include that, the rope is less strong. And so we really kind of lean into that and it's so delightful to see readers come in and discover writers that they may not have heard of. And so we like to get writers at the early part of their careers before they get a lot of publicity.
That's wonderful. That's my favorite part of going in the bookstore, being like, okay, this is what I like, what do I read? And that has led me to some of my favorite series and books. What do you like to read, can I ask?
Sure. So I read a lot of fiction, I read a lot of history.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I like historical fiction too.
Some historical, so there's so many writers now, like Tommy Orange, for example, who's a great indigenous writer, and he's written 2 books, just so he's very at the beginning.
Tommy Orange, I'm writing this down.
Yeah, Tommy Orange.
Okay.
And so he looks at recent indigenous history and through his own tribal, so he's Cheyenne and Arapaho, and he's also urban-based, and so he grew up in Oakland, California.
Interesting.
And so he takes his family through his 2 books all the way back to the 19th century, and then traces them through into the 21st century.
That's powerful.
It is very, very powerful.
That sounds powerful. I got to ask, before I let you go, what do you think the value of having independent bookstores will be moving forward? I mean, this book actually, your book has inspired me. I want to open a bookstore. no Chaucer allowed in my bookstore,
Okay.
but I want to open a bookstore. What do you think the importance of that is?
Well, it's about discovery. I mean, one of the things about Seattle, there are so many good bookstores of all different varieties. And so, like, you know, just whatever your interest or taste are, just like the process of discovery here, like just a few blocks away is Peter Miller, one of the most interesting architectural bookstores in the United States. And
And it's a blessing everywhere you go. One of my new favorite authors, Jasmine Silvera.
Yep.
She's amazing too, and I won't even get started. Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure. And just a reminder, Paul is holding an author event tonight, Wednesday, May 22nd at 7 p.m. at the Elliott Bay Book Company on Seattle's Capitol Hill. It is sure to be a wonderful discussion, very deep.